We've all been there. You're talking to someone, and at some point, you just run out of things to say. There's this awkward silence creeping in, and slowly but surely, you start to panic. You're desperately searching in your head for anything you could say, but it just goes completely blank. If that ever happened to you, then I'm glad this video found you, because I'm going to show you my 3-step framework of how you never run out of things to say. Plus one bonus tip at the end that makes it almost impossible that you're ever stuck in awkward silence again, even if everything goes wrong. I know exactly how this feels because it used to happen to me all the time. I wasn't antisocial, I wasn't awkward around my close friends, but the moment I had to talk to someone I didn't know that well, my mind would go blank. At first I thought it was just me, like I just wasn't good at conversations. But then I realized something: nobody actually teaches you this stuff. How to hold conversations, how to move past small talk, how to spark connection without forcing it. So I started learning it myself, and over the past 2.5 years, I shared what I learned online and reached over 50 million people in total. I'm not some guru, I'm just a completely normal guy like you, who actually sat down and figured this stuff out over years of trial and error. And over time, I turned it into my own personal 3-step framework that makes it almost impossible to ever run out of things to say. I just want you to keep one thing in mind before we start. What actually makes this framework so powerful is how real it is. So to make it work, you have to be real yourself and use it with genuine intentions and not as a cheap trick or some kind of manipulation. With that being said, let's start with the first and maybe most important step. 1. Attention shift. Most people think they struggle in conversations because they're boring, but in reality, it is because they're not present. They try to come across as interesting, smart, or confident. They always think about what to say next or how they are perceived, but that mindset puts you in your own head and pulls you out of the moment. So the first step of the framework is about shifting the focus away from yourself and getting curious about the other person instead. Not in a fake, how do I keep this going kind of way. Real curiosity, like, who is this person actually? What's going on in their world? Let's say someone tells you, oh man, work's been killing me lately. Most people respond with something like, oh yeah, I feel you, and then immediately follow up with, I've been super busy lately too. Without even noticing it, they just shifted the whole focus back to themselves. Now let's use the attention shift. Instead of talking about yourself, you ask them a question with genuine curiosity, something like, that sounds rough, what happened? Or, what exactly are you working on lately? See how this little shift changes the whole direction of the conversation? In the first scenario, you both just complained about work and the conversation goes dry. But in the second scenario, you actually give the other person the chance to open up. And once they do, you suddenly have way more to work with, more details, more things to dig into, more directions the conversation can go. But more on that in the next step. The most important part here is that you actually have to mean it. You're not just asking for the sake of it. You're asking because you actually want to know the answer. And that alone changes everything. Because when you're truly interested, the conversation flows on its own. But there's even more to that. Being curious isn't enough on its own. You still have to do something with it. And this is where most people mess up. 2. Hidden threads. I went hiking with my sister last weekend, but the weather was pretty bad the whole time. Most people hear a sentence like that and respond with something like, oh no, that sucks. Maybe followed by a, where'd you go hiking? You get a short answer back and then the conversation hits a wall, followed by awkward silence. But if you actually look at it closely, this one little sentence has way more potential than that. There are at least 3 components hiding inside it, and each offers so much material that you could talk for hours about it alone. I call these hidden threads. Let's break it down together. There's the sister, the hiking, and the bad weather. Each of these threads gives you a chance to lead the conversation in a certain direction. Do you and your sister do these kind of things often? Leads into their relationship. Do you go hiking a lot? Leads into their hobbies. Did you guys end up turning back because of the rain? Leads into the story of that actual day. Now, to actually discover these hidden threads in the first place, you have to really listen to what's being said. So instead of just waiting for your turn to speak, actually pay attention to the small details in what they're saying and also to how they're saying it. Sometimes it's not even a specific word, it's the tone, the little pause, or the way they laugh something off that tells you there's more behind it. But picking a thread is only the first step. Once you ask, actually listen to what they say back, because their answer will hand you even more threads to pull on. Let's play this out with just one of the threads from our example. You ask, did you guys end up turning back because of the rain? And they say, no, we actually pushed through it. My sister wanted to finish no matter what. Now you've got a whole new thread just from that one answer, the stubbornness of her sister, their relationship, or the actual story of what happened once they pushed through. So you follow up again. Sounds like she doesn't give up easily. Is she always like that? She laughs and says, oh, definitely. She's like that with everything, not just hiking. So you ask, yeah? Is that a sibling thing or is it just her? And just like that, you're 3 questions deep into an actual conversation. That's how one sentence about a rainy hike can turn into 2 hours of actual deep talk instead of 1 minute of superficial small talk followed by awkward silence. Now, I know that this sounds great in theory, but in reality, when you're right in the situation and maybe under a little pressure, spotting these threads on the spot can feel harder than it sounds. That's why I want to share a little trick with you that makes it easier. Just listen for anything specific, any person, place, activity, or small thing that happened. It doesn't matter if it's the main point of the sentence or just a small detail on the side, all of it can be a thread and therefore turn straight into a question. In our example, that's the sister, the hiking, and the weather. But we can also look at another example. I finally tried that new sushi place downtown with my roommate after work, but we almost didn't get a table. Now you tell me, what are the threads here? Correct. The sushi place downtown, the roommate, work, and even the fact that they almost didn't get a table. 4 completely different directions, all hiding in one casual sentence. Is that place actually good, or was it just hype? How long have you and your roommate lived together? Rough day at work, or a good one? Wait, you almost didn't get in? What happened? Once you start listening for the specific details, you'll notice threads hiding in almost everything people say, and every single one of them can be turned into a question. If you want to practice these kinds of things in real life, you can check out the 7-day charisma challenge in our bio. That's how far threading can take you. But I have to admit, there's a limit to it. At some point, you can't just keep asking questions. You also have to give something back, something real about yourself. 3. Self-disclosure. We all know these conversations where you're the only one who's asking questions and the other person is just giving you short, flat answers. Hey, how was your weekend? Good, just relaxed. Oh, nice. Relaxed how? Did you do anything specific? Not really, just stayed home. Ah, okay. Needed the break? Yeah, kind of. So what do you usually do to unwind? I don't know, just whatever really. No matter how many times you follow up, the other person just gives you nothing to work with, and the more you ask without getting anything back, the more it starts to feel like an interrogation instead of a conversation. So if you've ever been in a situation like this, here's what you can do. Stop asking questions for a second and give something instead. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just a small, honest statement like, not gonna lie, my week's been kind of stressful, I've barely had time to relax. Followed by a pause. By doing this, you're doing 2 things. First, you're shifting the whole dynamic of the interaction. Up until that point, you were the only one investing anything into it. You were the one carrying the whole thing. But if you stop asking questions for a second and just state something, you signal that this isn't a one-man show and that they need to bring something too. And second, without being passive-aggressive or accusing them of anything, you're handing them a direct chance to actually do that. And most of the time, that's exactly what happens. They'll say something like, yeah, honestly, I've had a pretty stressful week too. I had this one client who just wouldn't stop emailing me all week. Now here comes the interesting part. You could pick up on that and ask a follow-up question, or you could go even one step further and not really respond to it at all. Just stay quiet for a second, and almost always, they'll keep going on their own, adding more and eventually asking you something back like, was your week just as crazy, or did you actually have time to relax? And just like that, you're both invested again. But this only works if they're actually willing to meet you halfway. If you try this and they still just respond with something like, yeah, cool, and nothing more, then that's usually a pretty clear sign. At that point, I genuinely just leave them alone and not force the conversation any further. And one little comment about that staying quiet move. It's easy to take it too far. You could get comfortable with them doing all the investing now and just retreat back into your own shell, letting them carry the whole thing the same way you used to. But that's not the point. The whole idea is to get them out of their shell, and once they are, you meet them there and actually keep the conversation going together, in balance. Since you watched this far, I'm guessing you're actually serious about getting better at this. That's why I'm now going to share the bonus tip with you that I promised at the beginning, the one that makes it almost impossible that you're ever stuck in awkward silence again. Bonus tip: emergency questions. When you're in a conversation and your mind just goes completely blank, and no matter how hard you try, nothing comes to your mind, and that awkward silence starts creeping in, that's when you can use this trick right here. For me personally, this used to be the exact moment I panicked the most. My brain would just refuse to come up with anything, and the harder I tried, the worse it got. So here's what actually helped me: a set of universal go-to questions I already memorized in advance that I could just pull out the moment the absolute worst-case scenario actually came true. Let me introduce you to my emergency questions. 1. What's been the best part of your week so far? Broad enough that literally anyone can answer it, but specific enough that it doesn't feel like generic small talk. It also pushes people towards something positive, which almost always gets more than a one-word answer. 2. Any big plans coming up? That usually brings a different kind of energy into the conversation. People tend to light up a little more when they talk about something ahead of them. 3. I have zero ideas what to cook this week. Do you have any go-to meals? This doesn't even sound like a question you prepared. It sounds like something you genuinely say. It almost always gets people talking because everyone has an opinion on food and it can lead anywhere. Their taste, their cooking habits, or their culture. You can also adjust this question to other topics. It doesn't have to be about food. It can also be about music, series, or basically anything people have an opinion about. And here comes the best part about these emergency questions. Just knowing that you have them prepared as a backup takes off a lot of pressure and makes you go into conversations much more relaxed, because you know that even in the absolute worst case scenario, nothing bad could actually happen. And if we're being honest, even if there would be a little awkward silence, nothing bad actually happens either. It's really not that big of a deal. Most people stress about it way more than they actually need to. And that's honestly the mindset behind everything I just showed you. None of this is about never letting silence happen again. It's about having the tools ready so you can go more relaxed into conversations and actually enjoy them instead of being fearful and overthinking every single second of them. So let's quickly recap. First, attention shift. Stop focusing on yourself and get genuinely curious about the other person instead. Don't just ask questions for the sake of it. Actually listen and mean it, because that's what makes the conversation flow on its own. Second, hidden threads. Every sentence someone says has multiple directions hiding inside it. You just have to catch the small details instead of only reacting to the obvious part. Pick a thread, follow up on it, and one simple sentence can turn into an actual deep conversation. Third, self-disclosure. Don't just keep firing off questions the whole time. Share something real about yourself too. That's what keeps a conversation in balance and actually gives the other person the chance to invest in the conversation as well. And if you really want to play it safe, you can keep a couple of emergency questions memorized, ready for the moment your mind goes completely blank. But as already mentioned, the questions themselves aren't even the most important part. The real shift is just not putting so much pressure on yourself in the first place. If you found this video valuable, it would make me genuinely happy if you'd subscribe to our channel. We put a lot of effort and time into our videos, and subscribing costs absolutely nothing and is one of the biggest ways you can support us. And if you want to know how to even start conversations in the first place, you can watch this video right here.